Hey guys, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman, and today we're talking about the coronavirus, COVID-19, and specifically how it relates to crowdfunding, how it's going to impact shipping, fulfillment, cost increases, things that maybe actually are advantages for you right now. We're going to get a bit into that today because I talked with an expert on fulfillment, specifically, Chinese fulfillment, that region of the world. So I kind of wanted to talk about that just to prime you for what are some of the things you should be aware of. So you're going to get a lot of info on that in this episode here. Personally, COVID-19, I was in the Philippines when this whole coronavirus thing started to get a little bit more intense. And, there was a lockdown in the Philippines. I came back to New York and there was a lockdown there. So for the time being, I'm back with visiting my family in Massachusetts. And it's been crazy, man, like just seeing the panic, the waves and waves of panic, and the way that different countries are dealing with it is really interesting. Obviously, looking at Taiwan and South Korea, they've done a really good job, I think, in the way that they've been isolating this and dealing with it. I think we're sort of now starting to get on board a little bit more in the United States, but I do think it's going to be a couple of, probably 2 months at least until we start to see any kind of opening, if you will, where the sunshine comes in, the clouds part, and you can get a little bit of opportunity and a little bit of more on the bright side of things when it comes to the coronavirus. That being said, this is a perfect opportunity for you to dig in and to start working more focused and intensely on the project. This is, for me, the best times when I'm really productive are when I can't do anything else and I have to focus on the main things in my business. So I think this is actually an opportunity. Of course, if you have any health related things or a family member has been affected by this, my heart goes out to you. But just speaking strictly from like a business standpoint, this is a really good opportunity for you to start to really buckle down and put your head down and keep working. Always be working. There's that saying, when you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop. Another thing I just really want to quickly say was, in this interview, we talk a little bit about China's response to the coronavirus, and I don't particularly agree with some of the views of the guest, but I think it's important to be aware and to consider all of the opinions out there as it relates to this virus, the way that countries are dealing with it, capitalism in general. I'm a really strong pro-American, and I really am a big believer in the capitalist society here. Particularly, I do think that the way that it's being handled in terms of offering businesses a loan is actually a good thing. In the long run, we'll see how that pans out. But I do think it's really interesting, and just from a business friendly standpoint, it's been crazy to watch the way that this virus has affected the purchase of goods, markets in general, and I think just revealing a lot about consumer behavior and the ways that we can, as business owners, be smarter about our decisions, about our investments, about saving up and shoring up for the hard times, etc. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Also, I have a great guide out for you if you are interested in discovering some of the tricks when it comes to launching a Kickstarter campaign. So these are basically the compilation of a bunch of interviews, over 20 interviews that I conducted with successful Kickstarter projects. If you want to know what it's like to actually run a campaign, from preparing to launching to get backers, pledges, media coverage, go and pick up a copy of Tricks for Launching a Successful Kickstarter Campaign. All you got to do is go to crowdcrux.com/ebook. That is crowdcrux.com/ebook, crowdcrux.com/ebook. And you can get a copy of that guide. Very actionable. You can get through it pretty quickly. But it's really chocked full with a lot of practical advice that you can kind of put to use, and is almost virtually guaranteed to make sure that you raise more funds. Very actionable, practical guide, almost like a tool in your toolbox. But aside from that, at the end of this interview, I will give you a way, if you're interested, to book a one-on-one coaching call with me, and we have a more intensive session there. Without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. Hey, welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. We have Brian of Easy China Warehouse. His company helps with making shipping easy and also saving you a lot of time and money. And he specializes particularly in China and understanding the manufacturing and the shipping environment there. Given the whole coronavirus mess, he's going to come on the show and provide a lot of great insights into that for your upcoming crowdfunding campaign. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hopefully, I can help some of the listeners out through these crazy times that we have.
So, what have you been seeing over there? Are you in China right now?
Yeah, so our company is located in Shenzhen, China, which is the city that in the south that borders Hong Kong. So, if people are familiar with Hong Kong, we're right on the border there in the south.
Okay. What kind of stuff are you seeing over there? I mean, just I was caught in the Philippines during a lockdown when like the coronavirus was really starting to ramp up, and then came back to New York, and New York then had like a lockdown. It was like the worst epicenter. So I was just going from place to place. Now I'm back in Massachusetts with some of my family. But what have you been seeing over there in China?
Yeah, sounds like you followed it. Yeah, in China, the hardest part, the hardest time that we got hit was really in the end of January and February was kind of the toughest time for China. So it kind of ramped up in January into Chinese New Year, which a lot of people know was the last week of January. And then all through February, it was pretty tough. And at the end of February, we started to see production in China get back online slowly. Um,
Hmm.
and now through March, I would say most of the factories are up to their no, I don't want to say full capacity, but almost full capacity. And they're able to really take on orders, which unfortunately now there's a lot of less demand in the world. So they're very eager to actually get new orders at the moment.
Interesting. So they're basically able to be back at normal capacity. Do you think there's going to, like I've seen on the news, some micro outbreaks again happening in China? Do you think that's going to resurge at all, or it seems like it's pretty much done?
It's hard to say. I'd say it's absolutely possible. So we saw a little bit in the north of the border that with Russia, that actually there
Mhm.
were some kind of a small outbreak that happened with some people kind of crossing the border. And I know the Chinese government was trying to kind of isolate those cases and kind of stomp out the virus up there. But also at the same time, on the news, there's a lot of chatter from the government about the concern of a second wave of the virus. So people are
Mm.
concerned. Everyone's still wearing masks here. Everyone still gets temperature checks. So they have temperature checks going into all public places, my apartment, my warehouse complex. So there's still relatively strong measures to kind of still be cautious as the economy tries to get back to normal here.
When that happened in January, February, was it like a big standstill for you and your business in terms of being able to ship, or what kind of was like the climate like during that crisis?
Yeah, so actually we were kind of lucky. We were allowed we kind of kept shipping through the whole time. However, after the it started to get bad and during Chinese New Year, basically all events were closed. So normally in China everything closes during Chinese New Year for about 10 days to 2 weeks. And the government basically shut down all events during that time and they extended the Chinese New Year to try to stop the spread of the virus. But after the Chinese New Year ended, they created new safety rules for all factories and all companies in China to follow. And those safety rules needed to be abided by, and a safety inspector needed to come to our facility to let us commence operations. And so those safety procedures included us taking temperature of all of our employees, us registering our employees at our facility and providing kind of the proper protection equipment, so masks and gloves, and also disinfecting the facility every day. So a lot of companies actually had a hard time getting back to work simply because there weren't enough safety inspectors to go and allow them to commence operations. So that was like the main thing that slowed a lot of companies down getting back to normal after the Chinese New Year.
And for your company, are you guys mainly handling the fulfillment side where a factory produces a widget and then you bring it into your warehouse and you do the fulfillment, or are you working directly with factories? Like, can you walk us through a little bit how that works?
Yeah, so we don't actually work directly with factories, so we focus mainly on fulfillment, and our focus is on e-commerce fulfillment. So that would include crowdfunding campaigns, drop shipping. So anyone that has like a Shopify drop shipping store, and also Amazon FBA stores. So in the past, we've helped quite a few crowdfunding campaigns fulfill their products after manufacturing, and typically it would work like this. Usually, our customer would manufacture a product in China. And after the manufacturing was done, they would ship the product to our warehouse. And that's where we would prep it. So we would pack it and label it and then ship it on to the final customer. And we do also a lot of the add-on value services that a third-party logistic company would, or a warehouse, like labeling or kitting or any of that type of work. We do that as well.
Well, when I think of Shenzhen, and getting your first product manufactured, there's a lot of value to having, feet on the ground and being able to go to the factory and seeing what it's like and all that kind of stuff. What do you think the value is of having your fulfillment company in China? What are the pros there that go with that?
Yeah, so specifically, I mean, if you talk about, I'll kind of feature kind of crowdfunding campaigns, but if you do send your products to a large variety of countries, around the world, it's often easier to get everything pick, packed, and shipped directly from China to that end customer rather than bulk shipping it to another fulfillment facility in, let's say, Europe or the US or Canada, and then having them ship it. So it simplifies things. Um, and sometimes from a cost perspective, it's could be cheaper, or it could be, not much more expensive than doing it direct from China. Um, and for more global e-commerce sellers, like people that eventually after their crowdfunding campaign, they want to sell on Amazon or they want to sell on their own shop, um, we help people basically distribute their product in bulk after their campaign to the respective marketplaces. So if you wanted to sell in Europe and the US, and Japan, it's sometimes more efficient to leave your stock in China. And as each one of those marketplaces run out of inventory, we can help you kind of refill your inventory. So instead of like shipping it a whole container to the US and realizing you need inventory in Japan and then shipping it back to Japan, which is like expensive and more costly, we kind of help just keep it in China and then ship it to the place as needed. So that's like the main benefits that we see for a lot of the people that work with us.
Okay, interesting. And for the clients that you had, that were running an online store or doing a crowdfunding campaign, how were they dealing with this coronavirus? Like, what was the climate? Did you see a lower number of customers when it comes to crowdfunding campaigns? Do you see like a dip, if you will, in e-commerce, or for some of your clients, it wasn't affected at all?
Yeah, I think the biggest effect now on the market for sure is the price of air freight. Um, so what we've seen happen in the last month or two is that the supply of air freight has decreased a lot, because a lot of people don't realize that a lot of air freight is actually put in the bellies of passenger planes. And since those flights have all been canceled, we see like a very constrained supply in the amount of air freight that we have. And in addition, a lot of personal protection equipment. So a lot of the masks and suits that a lot of the healthcare workers need are being airshipped all around the world. And so the demand for air freight has increased a lot. And so we've seen the biggest effect is really, really high air freight prices that we've never seen before. And that, of course, affects anyone that wants to fulfill for a crowdfunding campaign, because their fulfillment costs are also going to be increased. And it's going to be more expensive for them to get their products to their backers. So, specifically for crowdfunding, we see that right now as the biggest surprise in the market that's happened because of coronavirus.
Interesting. But one of the differences there being that's going to be more impactful for someone who just finished their campaign, right? and then they're in the mass production kind of stage and then shipping it out to backers. For people that are right now more in the beginning stage and they're going to be doing the campaign and probably getting this out in like 5 months time, do you think that's going to maintain sort of through that period, or do you think it's going to taper off?
I hope that the virus will slow the spread, and then we'll need less, you know, protective equipment, and we'll also open more flights around the world. So I hope that's the trend. Um, and I'd anticipate, like, in 4 or 5 months, that definitely the air freight rates will go back to more normal. But obviously, it's very hard to say. And a few weeks ago, I would have told you that air freight rates were going to level off and go down, but in that time, they've only gone up. So
Mm,
I've been wrong already once, and I don't know how I can put a timeline on, when kind of we'll get more capacity in the air freight market and how long that will take. But for people that are definitely, producing now or will produce in the next month or two, it might be a risk. If you're talking 4 or 5 months out, then it might not be a risk at that time. So that's what
mhm.
I'd say for like a guideline to go by.
Are there any other components that you see affecting other types of e-commerce? Aside from the air freight increased cost, do you see any other effects that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I would say just general delivery. So, when we ship express UPS or DHL from China to other places, I mean bulk shipments, we're seeing about twice the normal amount of time to deliver. So if UPS normally gave us 4 to 5 day shipping, we're seeing 8 to 10. Um, and we're seeing similar delays also on the ground in places like the US, where the USPS does delivery up to the final destination. So we're seeing like delays throughout the final destination delivery as well. So I would say if people are planning to ship now and they're trying to give their backers like an idea of how long it's going to take to get there, I would recommend that they actually double the amount of time that it's normally takes to give them like a better cushion so that their backers won't be screaming at them when it's delayed. So
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, it's something that I think frustrates everyone is when you become a part of the supply chain and there's a blockage or one part of the supply chain goes down, it affects the entire business, right? And it can be so frustrating because it's kind of out of your control. There's not very much you can do.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we're kind of at the mercy of how many flights there are and how much capacity there is and how much we can compete with the people that are buying like masks, right? And so, hospitals in the US and hospitals in the in Europe have a lot of money to pay for air freight and to buy all these things. So we're also kind of at the mercy of the market, and we're unable to really control it as well. So, yeah, it's tough when these things happen because you kind of feel like you're in a bind. I guess it's important to just uh, keep that in mind and use that in your messaging when you're talking to your customers or your backers for sure.
What are your thoughts on how the whole government in your area of the world handled this problem? Like, is it you think they're now kind of getting it under control and they have a much better sense in terms of policy and like what has to be done? It seems pretty stringent with all the testing you're telling me, but I'm just kind of curious what your take is of how the government handled it.
Yeah, so overall, like there was some maybe missteps in the beginning, but I would say um, overall, the government in China did a really good job in isolating people within China. Well, first of all, testing. So they kind of scaled out industrial testing. So they were able to test a large portion of the population all at once and find out who had the virus and then quickly and efficiently isolate them from the rest of the people. And so they did that very effectively, not only by quarantining cities, which we've never seen before in human history, right? Like, 12 million people, cities being quarantined overnight, um, but also in their use of technology. So in China, we all have an app on our phone, and that gives people or the government or any place that I go to information about my health status, where I've traveled to, and whether or not I'm a risk. Um, and they have all this information that they can kind of help the flow of people and to protect people from infected cases. So I think maybe in a democracy or in a Western democracy, these type of measures might not be you might not be able to do it to the people. Um, but at least here, where you have a strong centralized government, they carried out these type of measures, and in my opinion, they were very effective.
Mhm.
Although very debilitating on the free movement of people, it worked. You know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big differences, obviously, United States having much more state control, in terms of like you have to get all the individual states on board with what it is you're doing,
Right.
right? But even when I was in the Philippines, just seeing the way that the government is testing people before you go into a mall, before you go into even an apartment, et cetera, like that was really pretty strict, stringent testing that I was seeing there. On the other hand, when it comes to Chinese tourists, a lot of that just going to different places like Cambodia and seeing groups of tourists and them not being aware that they're spreading it. It's like it's very difficult, I think, to deal with a disease like this, particularly when there's that human element, that human component. So I
Yeah.
think we're all like learning from it, honestly.
Yeah, and I think we still don't know a lot about it. Surprisingly, we've had it spread for so many months, but um, I think we're still reaching, and the population's reaching to hear like how is it spread? Is it air? Is it? I mean, we know it's spread by contact with people, but the details of how uh, viral it is, we don't really have yet. And so I think that also adds to the fear of going out, because you really don't know like how close can you be to someone, did they touch that, and if I touch it, will I get it? So um, I think there's a little bit of concern around that because there's a lot of unknowns still.
Yeah, definitely a lot of uncertainty. Ironically, I think a lot more online orders, people are becoming much more familiar with it just because they have to, right? If you're in a suburban town and you got to order from Amazon because your local store doesn't have stock, right? So people are becoming a little bit more comfortable, ironically, with online ordering. One of the other questions I had for you was, these kinds of crises happen all the time, right? You could have like a major depression or recession or just health scares, et cetera. Is there anything that on your front you are going to change as a business owner, preparing for another crisis that could happen? Whether that's being more financially aware or having better practices, I don't know, with your employees or anything. Did you learn anything in that way?
Yeah, I think overall, like, I mean, I've run my business relatively conservatively, and we've always had like a reasonable amount of cash to survive for a few months of tough times, and I was lucky to kind of do that just naturally for my business. But I think I'm going to definitely have a more concerted effort to like make sure that like our cash flows are good and that we do have cash built up for tougher times, because I think a lot of businesses that are having trouble, they really don't have a rainy day fund, at all. They're kind of, and maybe they've leveraged themselves too much or took on too much debt. And I think sometimes people get too worked up in trying to grow as fast as they can, and they might take unnecessary risks that they don't need to. And I think if you build your business um, with stable cash flow and not over leveraging yourself, you'll be able to weather these type of storms more easily, and you'll be able to grow from them as well. So a lot of times when people are in panic, uh, companies with cash or companies that have the opportunity to survive will usually come out of them much stronger. So I think people should not only focus on growth, but also focus a lot on sustainability as they grow their businesses.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think in personal finance, it's very common to believe that you need, 3 months or 6 months worth of expenses, have your emergency fund, the rainy day fund, like all that stuff. But when it comes to our business, we don't really think about that. Right. And I think it's just kind of transferring that same strategy to the business that you maybe have in your personal life. And it makes things a little bit you less liable for the volatility that's out there, in the marketplace. And sometimes periods like this, I think, are meant to have you focus on what's really important, not doing all the little side projects that maybe were, getting your attention, and being really focused. A lot of these periods tend to make me just much more aligned with like, okay, what do I really need to get done, over the next 3 months or so. So they really helped me focus. But I think the markets here also in the United States, like it's so interesting watching the reaction to it. And like how that's impacting the stock market, how that's impacting even now like massive loans that are being giving out to businesses, which I don't know if little guys even get access to that in the way they need. But what are your thoughts on the climate of like the markets there in China?
Yeah, I actually have a very strong thought about this, because China's taking a very different approach. They're actually not providing rescue funds to businesses. And what that means is basically the weak fail and the strong thrive. So it kind of, this is kind of sometimes painful for a lot of people to hear, but it's very, very capitalistic. It's very to the core of how capitalism works. Um, and I think it also incentivizes business in China in the right way. So it basically punishes the people that were irresponsibly running businesses, taking on too much risk, and making decisions that were too, not correct for their business. And it rewards the people that do the right thing and grow sustainable businesses. And I think the U.S. doing these type of bailout type packages, I actually think it's bad for the U.S. in the long term, and it basically just puts debt on more debt. And if you incentivize big companies that don't run their business efficiently, that every time there's a problem, you can just take a bailout. I don't think that's the right incentive for the people, and I also don't think it creates a good, efficient economy. So I actually very much disagree with this type of method. And I much prefer actually the way that the Chinese are going about it. So,
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Um, do you notice that one of the common questions I always get when it comes to business in China is the way that government and business is intermingled? Do you find that that's the case where because a lot of these businesses are so tightly kind of connected to the Chinese government, that makes them a little bit easier to weather that storm, or it doesn't really have that effect?
yeah, I don't think it has that effect. I actually used to work for one of the largest Chinese state owned companies. So I actually worked for the Chinese government doing manufacturing in the heart of China for 5 years. And the state owned companies are actually a very small portion of the overall economy when you look at the number of enterprises within China. So, just as like the US is very much fueled by like small businesses, I think there's like 30 million, and don't quote me on this number, like businesses in the US, like small businesses. It's a similar distribution in China as well. Actually, most businesses are smaller businesses that are private and they're run by individuals. Um, so yeah, the state owned businesses certainly are going to survive through this, obviously, but the non state owned, which is a majority of the market, will not get bailouts, and they will have to either survive or die, basically. So yeah, I don't see it as a huge effect specifically within China.
Okay, cool. When it comes to people now that are kind of in the trenches and they're gearing up to the launch of a crowdfunding campaign, and they're kind of wondering, like, do you think I should do this now? Is this a good time to start approaching manufacturers? Should I be waiting for a couple of months? What is your answer for them?
Yeah, so I think right now you have an advantage in the fact that factories are desperate for orders because the economies around the world have been hit so hard. And also, factories' orders have been declining over the past month. So it's kind of a buyer's market where you might be able to get better terms, you might be able to get a better price, or a lower MOQ, that a factory is willing to do. So I think in that respect, it's definitely an advantage if you are doing a campaign to like talk to a lot of factories now, because you'll get a really good deal, I think. Um, in terms of like thinking about the economy and how many people will buy, I think it's prudent to not overextend yourself when you do make your first purchase. So don't buy too much inventory and lay out too much cash, just in case you have trouble selling it, depending on what the economy does in the future after your campaign. And I think a lot of people make mistakes by trying to buy too much quantity because they get a lower price. And I honestly recommend that just pay a little bit more for the product and just buy a little bit less, and your business is like much more de-risked than holding all of that inventory. Because we do ship for a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, and we found that a good amount of them actually order way too much inventory, and we end up holding like this inventory for years in our warehouse. So I think it's important to be prudent when you are making your quantity order decision as well.
Well said. Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people go and learn a little bit more about those services?
Yeah, sure. You can go to easychinawarehouse.com, or you can email me directly. I'll be happy to answer any questions at brian@easychinawarehouse.com. So either way, I'd be happy to help anyone out.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, and we'll have to have you back.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. My name is Salvador Briggman. Hope you got a lot of good educational advice and tips out of this interview as it relates to figuring out how to navigate this whole coronavirus mess, right? And I kind of wanted to clarify, just take a second to clarify some of my thoughts related to China, because it's kind of a politicized topic, right? When I was talking about state-owned enterprises, what I was meaning by that are companies that are basically intimately tied to the Chinese government. Just looking it up now on ChinaBriefing.com, central and state-owned enterprises account for around 40% of total enterprises in China. The main targets are electricity, oil and gas, railway industries, etc. Pulling up another figure, as of 2017, the contribution of state-owned firms to China's GDP was estimated between 23 and 28% in their share, and employment was 5% to 16% in 2017, as assessed by the World Bank. So that's what I meant when I was talking about state-owned companies in China. Obviously, there's a whole different philosophy between Western democracy and the government of China and the way that they do business, and just the whole culture in general. I'm far more of a proponent of the American lifestyle and sort of way of handling economics in general. But at the same time, I recognize the realities that doing a major, you call it a bailout or offering loans or however you want to phrase it for American businesses. Personally, there's obviously the side that a lot of larger corporations might be able to just use these funds and be able to suck the money kind of out of the system. And that's, obviously the gains go to the people who have the biggest footprint in the marketplace. And even if that's not always you feel justified or something that's not always fair, but that's one of the reasons why crowdfunding exists. And one of the reasons why I exist in this space is to help the little guy and show you how you can still carve a path, and that this capitalist economy is ripe for opportunity. I also think that it is a good thing that there are funds out there for even smaller businesses, restaurants and these things that have a staff, and being able to use a loan for something like that, I think is incredible. The fact that government is willing to do that. Now, naturally, that obviously adds to our debt, but this is getting really political. I don't want to get super into that in this show, but I just kind of want to preface some of my thoughts there so that you knew where I was coming from. As it relates to this, I think that navigating this arena in general when it comes to crowdfunding is something that can be a little bit difficult and can cause a lot of uncertainty, right? Because you might hear some advice from one person that's different from another person. And my role here is just to give you many different perspectives, many different views, different categories when it comes to Kickstarter and Indiegogo, people who are women and men from different age groups, from different areas of the world. And you then get to decide who you are going to listen to and who you are going to follow, and then I provide my own commentary there. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Take a second to rate and review this podcast on iTunes. And also, if you are interested in a one-on-one coaching call with me to get my full attention, an hour-long intensive call related to your project, going through feedback, going through your marketing strategy, things you need to do, connect you with resources and people in the industry, etc. Maybe how I can also help with your campaign. You can go to crowdcrux.com/coaching. That link will take you to my coaching form where you can fill out a little bit of information, tell me a little bit about your project, and we can get that call underway. That link is crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching, crowdcrux.com/coaching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go and check out some of the other free podcasts we got out there, and I will see you next time.